Appalachian, a mountain range in eastern North America, stretching approximately 2,400 kilometers from Canada to Alabama, USA. This place is wild and majestic, yet it harbors eerie mysteries. For centuries, those who live here have passed down strange tales of unknown entities, lurking figures in the darkness, and chilling sounds echoing through the deep forests. Some say that beings not of this world hide among the dense trees. Others speak of shadowy figures appearing at night, eerie voices emerging from nowhere, and unexplainable events. In this video, join me as we uncover two of the most terrifying stories from this mysterious land. Are these merely folklore or real warnings? Hold on to your light, because in the darkness of Appalachian, you never know what might be watching you. Story 1. The Mysterious Child. A man had spent nearly his entire life in Pennsylvania, but he had only ever been familiar with the bustling, crowded urban areas. When he reached adulthood and could make his own choices, he decided to pursue his true passion, nature. After a long search, he bought a small house deep in the Appalachian Mountains. The process of purchasing and settling in was not easy, from obtaining permits to months of legal paperwork. But finally, after nearly a year, he could call this place home. The house was not a luxurious mansion, but it was perfect for him, a man who loved a secluded, peaceful life surrounded by untouched wilderness. His family did not fully support his decision, especially his brother. It wasn't that his brother hated nature, but perhaps he had heard too many eerie stories about the region, making him uneasy at the thought of a man living alone there. However, as his brother's children grew more eager to visit, he eventually agreed to bring them over on weekends. He deeply cherished his two nieces and always looked forward to their visits. They helped him reconnect with the outside world, pulling him out of his solitary existence. But one summer night, something happened that haunted them forever. That evening, the family played together on the porch, enjoying the fresh air despite the lingering heat. They were having fun when suddenly, the youngest niece, only 5 years old, turned and asked,
"Uncle, can Juliana play with us?"
He was taken aback. The name was completely unfamiliar to him. He thought it might be a friend from the city that his niece accidentally mentioned, or perhaps just an imaginary friend, as children often create. He asked, "Who is Juliana?" The little girl answered innocently,
"She lives here in the forest. I met her last night when I was playing outside. She said she wants to play with us, but she needs your permission first."
Hearing this, a man felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at his older niece to see if she knew anything, but she only shrugged. Clearly, she had no idea what was going on either. He tried not to let his unease take over his reasoning. He assumed the child was just imagining things, and to avoid scaring her, he smiled and said, "All right, if Juliana wants to, she can play with us." The family continued playing, but he noticed that his niece occasionally glanced toward the forest, as if waiting for someone. After a while, she suddenly suggested,
"Uncle, let's go into the forest to call her. Maybe she's waiting for us."
This time, the eerie feeling intensified. Though he did not believe in ghost stories, a man had lived in the Appalachian region long enough to know one important rule: never go into the forest at night. There had been one time he broke this rule, and the primal fear that gripped him made him swear never to do it again. He shook his head. "We can't do that. If Juliana wants to play, she can come here." Seeing that it was getting late, he decided to bring the children inside, despite their disappointment. Before bed, he told the older niece, "I'm locking the door. If someone knocks, don't open it unless it's me." A man didn't know why he said that, but something in his gut felt disturbingly uneasy. Being accustomed to staying up late, he sat reading on the back porch. About 30 minutes passed before he realized the forest had fallen into an eerie silence. Even at night, the Appalachian forest was always alive with the sounds of crickets, insects, and rustling leaves. But now, everything was still. Then he heard it. A soft, singing voice echoed from the forest. The voice was gentle, not inherently frightening, if it had come from anywhere else. But in the deep darkness of the Appalachian wilderness, surrounded by dense trees, it became strangely unsettling and terrifying. He looked into the darkness and saw a little girl sitting on the ground playing, A child? In the middle of the forest at this hour? He was bewildered. His instincts told him to check if something was wrong. Perhaps this was a lost child. He stood up, locked the door, grabbed his phone, and approached the girl. But as soon as he got close, she looked at him and immediately ran deeper into the forest. He called 911 while running after her. But then she suddenly leaped into a narrow crevice in the rocks, a place he couldn't follow. He tried to calm her, assuring her he meant no harm. The police were on their way. Meanwhile, he patiently stood there, trying to convince the girl to come out. Then he received a call from the officers. "We just arrived at your house, and it looks like there's been a break-in." He froze. He ran home at full speed, his mind racing with the worst possible scenarios. When he arrived, the sight before him sent a chill down his spine. The back door had been completely shattered. Mud was scattered across the floor, even though it hadn't rained. The walls, and especially the bedroom door where the kids slept, were covered in deep scratch marks. At first, he thought it might have been a bear, but when a wildlife expert was called in, they concluded that no known animal could have left those marks. There was no sign that the little girl in the forest had ever existed. In the end, he realized the truth. The girl wasn't the target. The real targets were his two nephews. Something had deliberately lured him away from the house so it could get inside. And if the police hadn't arrived in time, he didn't even want to think about what would have happened. From that day on, he never let the kids spend the night at his house again, and he never forgot the name, Juliana. Story 2. The Man at the Window. A young couple, both born and raised in the Appalachian Mountains, had spent their childhood surrounded by vast forests, babbling streams, and cold nights listening to eerie local legends. When they got married, they rented a small house in town to start a new life. However, after 2 years of living in the bustling streets, they both deeply missed the wilderness. So they decided to return to their roots and purchased an old cabin deep in the woods. The cabin once belonged to an elderly hunter who had mysteriously disappeared a few years ago. Eventually, the local authorities declared him deceased. His son, having no intention of living in the woods, sold the cabin to the couple at a low price. The house had been abandoned for years and had deteriorated significantly, but with their renovation experience, they believed they could turn it into a perfect home. For over a year and a half, the couple spent most of their time restoring the cabin. They added a small porch at the front, remodeled the kitchen and living room into an open space, and even built a second floor with 2 bedrooms and a study. Everything was coming together just as they had envisioned, except for one issue. The indoor bathroom was still unusable. As a result, they had to rely on the old outhouse, located several dozen yards away in a small shed. On the night of July 16th last year, the couple had a late dinner. After cleaning up the kitchen, the wife prepared to watch a movie to relax, while the husband, feeling slightly unwell, told her he was going outside to use the restroom. Outside, the night was pitch black, with only a faint glow from the house's lights. As he walked, he enjoyed the crisp mountain air, though a strange unease settled in his chest, not out of fear, but from a nagging feeling that something was off. As he neared the outhouse, he noticed a movement to his right. Instinctively, he turned his head, but there was nothing. Probably just a rabbit or a squirrel, he reassured himself before stepping into the small shed. He had barely sat down for a minute when he heard footsteps outside. At first, he assumed his wife had decided to check on him, despite knowing she was terrified of the dark. He called out, "Babe, is that you?" No answer. A chilling silence fell over the area. He couldn't hear the usual chirping of insects or the rustling of leaves in the wind. It felt as if the entire forest was holding its breath. His grip tightened around the door handle, bracing himself for the worst. Suddenly, he felt a faint pull on the handle from the outside. Someone was standing right outside the door. A cold shiver ran down his spine. It couldn't be his wife. She would never joke like this, especially in such a dark and unsettling place. He held the handle firmly. his heart pounding in his chest. After a few tense moments, the pressure on the handle ceased, and he heard footsteps retreating into the woods. He bolted out of the outhouse and sprinted back to the cabin. As he approached, he saw his wife standing by the window, staring out with a tense expression. The moment she spotted him, she rushed to the door, yanked him inside, and locked it behind him. "There's someone out there!" she gasped. "I know," he replied, still catching his breath. She immediately called the police while he retrieved the shotgun they kept in the cupboard. They locked all the windows, drew the curtains, and pressed their backs against the wall, trying to remain silent. Suddenly, the wife let out a quiet gasp, covering her mouth with her hands. The husband followed her gaze and felt his blood run cold. Outside the living room window, a man stood motionless. He had both hands pressed against the glass, his face pushed up against the window pane, wearing an eerie, twisted grin. His wide, unblinking eyes stared straight at them. In the dim light, they could make out a fresh cut on his lower lip. Without thinking, the husband raised his shotgun, cocked it, and aimed directly at the man. The man glanced at the gun, then slowly turned his gaze back to him, and then he winked. Without a word, he turned around and disappeared into the darkness. The couple ran upstairs, locked themselves in the bedroom, and waited for the police. Due to the remote location, it took the authorities 45 minutes to arrive. When they searched the area, they found no sign of the man, but they did discover a small campsite just 90 feet from the cabin. His setup was disturbingly simple: a tiny tent, a sleeping bag, some food, and the most unsettling discovery of all, a pair of binoculars. The police confirmed that he had been camping there for at least 2 weeks. Terrified, the couple left immediately and rented their old home in town. It wasn't until the end of the year, when they had finally regained some sense of security, that they decided to return to the cabin and resume their renovations. 2.5 months have passed since their return, and nothing strange has happened since. But the unease never truly left. No matter how hard they try, they can't shake the memory of his eyes that night, or the twisted grin imprinted on their window pane. Perhaps, sooner or later, they will have to leave this place for good.